In 2001, Enron was praised as one of America's most powerful companies, yet behind its shining public image, its books were carrying losses that could no longer stay hidden. Its collapse became the largest corporate bankruptcy in the United States at that time, destroying savings, jobs, and trust in modern finance. The company had appeared bold, clean, and almost untouchable. Its offices filled the Houston skyline, its leaders spoke of a new age of business, and investors believed Enron had found a way to turn energy into wealth without limits. But the deeper investigators looked, the wider the gap became between what Enron claimed to own and what it could truly pay. Enron's first promise was simple: make energy easier to buy and sell. Instead of only building power plants or pipelines, the company began trading contracts for gas, electricity, and other services that would be delivered later. Enron stood between buyers and sellers, taking fees and promising that energy would always be available. This looked like a brilliant change. A farmer, factory, or city did not have to worry as much about sudden price changes. Enron would manage the risk through a large network of deals. But each contract was also a promise about the future, and the value of that promise depended on events that had not happened yet. Kenneth helped turn that promise into a public belief system. As Enron's chairman and chief executive, he presented the company as a force for progress in a changing energy world. Investors trusted his calm confidence, politicians welcomed his influence, and employees were told they were part of something larger than an ordinary company. Enron's story carried real emotional power. Old energy rules were weakening, new markets were opening, and Lay spoke as if Enron could guide the country through that change. The company did not simply sell energy, it sold the idea that intelligence, speed, and faith in the future could defeat every limit. Jeffrey Skilling pushed that idea even further. He helped move Enron away from being mainly an energy company and toward becoming a giant trading machine. Success was measured less by money already collected and more by the number and size of deals the company could create. That shift made growth look faster than it really was. When Enron signed a long contract, leaders could point to the money they expected to earn over many years. The danger was clear in simple terms. If a deal later lost money, the company had already celebrated its expected gain. A key accounting rule made this danger much harder to see. Known as mark-to-market accounting, it allowed Enron to estimate the total future profit from a long contract and record much of that profit immediately, even before the work began or the money arrived. On paper, hope became income. A contract could produce a large reported gain on the first day, while its costs, delays, and risks waited somewhere beyond the numbers. Enron's profits began to describe a future that had not yet come, and the company's survival became tied to making that future appear more certain every quarter. The first strong results created a trap. Once Enron reported large gains from future deals, those gains became the new standard. Investors expected the next quarter to look just as bright, and senior leaders were expected to keep the story moving upward. That pressure changed the meaning of a deal. Managers were rewarded for creating reported profit quickly, even when the cash would arrive years later or might never arrive at all. A weak business plan could still look successful if its hoped-for gains were recorded early enough. Each promise of growth demanded another promise, and the space for honest failure grew smaller. Beyond the polished offices, ordinary people placed their trust in the company. Employees built careers around Enron and often held its stock in their retirement accounts. Investors bought shares because respected analysts and business leaders described Enron as a model of the future. In cities where the company brought jobs, donations, and prestige, its success felt like a source of strength, but the strength was uneven. The public saw rising profits and a powerful brand, while the company carried risks that were difficult to understand from the outside. Enron needed constant confidence from the people around it. The more people depended on that confidence, the more dangerous it became to question what supported it. To keep difficult assets and risky deals away from Enron's main records, the company used separate legal structures known as special purpose entities. In simple terms, these were side companies connected to Enron, but presented as separate from it. They could hold troubled investments, debts, or contracts that made the main company look weaker. This arrangement could be lawful when it followed strict rules and operated with real independence, but its effect was powerful. Losses and obligations could be placed somewhere that investors did not see as part of Enron's central business. The frightening evidence was not erased. It was moved out of the main picture, where fewer people could recognize its size. The deeper problem was that some of these outside structures were tied to Enron insiders. Andrew Fastow, Enron's chief financial officer, helped create and control arrangements involving entities such as LJM and the Raptors. These structures were supposed to stand apart from Enron, yet people close to Enron could influence both sides of important deals. That created a conflict at the heart of the system. The same network could help decide how an asset was valued, how a risk was transferred, and how the result appeared in Enron's reports. The issue was not only that debt had been moved, it was that the people shaping the move could benefit from making Enron look stronger than it was. The concealment worked through a chain of steps. Enron estimated future gains and recorded them early. It placed weak assets or obligations in connected entities. Then it used new deals, outside money, or rising market values to support the appearance that the earlier gains were real. The public reports did not show one simple pile of losses waiting to be uncovered. The danger was scattered across contracts, partnerships, guarantees, and changing estimates. Each piece could appear technical or temporary on its own. Together, they formed a hidden structure that required constant new deals to keep standing. When confidence weakened, the entire structure had nowhere left to hide. In California, the consequences of Enron's trading model stopped looking like figures on a report and began entering homes. During the electricity crisis of 2000 and 2001, power shortages and soaring prices placed families, businesses, and public agencies under intense pressure. The system that had been praised as financial innovation was now connected to fear, uncertainty, and bills that many people struggled to pay. Inside trading rooms, energy was treated as a product to be bought and sold under changing conditions. California's market rules created opportunities for complex deals, and Enron traders operated within that confusion. Investigations later examined whether some traders manipulated supplies or transactions to increase profits. Whatever the legal finding in each case, the public saw something disturbing. While ordinary people faced blackouts and rising costs, powerful companies were making money inside the disorder. The crisis did not create every problem at Enron, but it made the company's business harder to present as harmless innovation. Its profits depended on complicated contracts, changing prices, and confidence that future payments would arrive. When the market became unstable, those promises were no longer easy to protect. A trading company could appear successful as long as each new deal supported the value of the deals before it. But stress exposed the weakness beneath that design. If prices moved against Enron, or if partners could not pay, expected gains could shrink while real debts remained. The company needed constant trust to keep a fragile chain from breaking. The warning signs were already buried inside Enron's reports. Some filings contained complicated notes that few ordinary investors could easily follow. The company relied heavily on estimates about future earnings, carried debts connected to outside entities, and sometimes reported strong results, even when its visible cash position seemed far less impressive. None of these clues formed one simple confession. They were scattered across pages of technical language, legal structures, and financial claims. Together, they suggested that Enron's reported strength depended less on money already collected than on outcomes that still had to happen. The danger was hidden, not by a single secret, but by the difficulty of seeing the whole picture. Enron's reputation made that difficulty even worse. Investors saw a celebrated company that had changed the energy business. Analysts saw a successful trading story, backed by leaders who spoke with confidence and authority. When respected people repeated the same message, doubt could begin to feel unreasonable, even when the numbers raised quiet questions. That pressure was social as much as financial. Few investors wanted to challenge a company praised by experts, institutions, and the market itself. Employees feared what criticism might do to their careers and savings. The stronger Enron appeared in public, the harder it became for outsiders to imagine that its success might rest on hidden weakness. The outside firm responsible for examining Enron's reports was Arthur Andersen, one of the most respected accounting firms in the United States. An auditor's basic duty is simple: test a company's claims and warn outsiders when the books do not fairly show its condition. That duty matters because most investors cannot inspect every contract or trace every debt themselves. The disturbing question was not only whether Arthur Andersen understood every part of Enron's complex structure, it was whether the firm challenged enough of what it was being shown. Andersen earned large fees from Enron while also providing other services, creating a relationship that raised concerns about independence. The guard assigned to check the system had become deeply connected to the company it was meant to watch. Arthur Andersen's role became harder to defend as Enron's records grew more complex. Auditors had to examine deals built on estimates, future prices, outside partnerships, and companies linked to Enron's own leaders. The problem was not that every auditor knew every hidden fact. The deeper failure was that the process stopped challenging the story when the story became too difficult to test. Complexity can hide weakness without hiding a single piece of evidence. Each deal may appear reasonable on its own, while the full structure becomes impossible to understand from the outside. Enron's auditors reviewed numbers, reports, and explanations inside a relationship that also brought the firm large consulting fees. The guard was standing inside the same system it was meant to question. The first people to look past the celebration were not gathered in one place. They were journalists reading footnotes, investors studying cash flow, and short sellers searching for a reason Enron's share price might fall. Short selling meant betting that a stock would lose value. That bet gave skeptics a strong reason to search for weakness instead of accepting the company's success at face value. Among those skeptics was Bethany McLean, a journalist who questioned how Enron could be valued so highly when its financial results were difficult to explain. Other analysts, including short sellers, examined the partnerships, the debt, and the gap between reported profit and visible cash. Their doubts did not immediately stop the company, but they created the first cracks in a wall built from praise. As questions spread, Enron's filings became harder to treat as harmless complexity. Investors wanted to know what the partnerships owed, who controlled them, and whether Enron could be forced to support them. These were not minor details. If reported profits depended on uncertain estimates, while real obligations remained outside the main accounts, then the company's strength might exist mostly on paper. The cause and effect was brutal. Once investors feared that the reported numbers could not be trusted, they also feared that Enron's debts were larger than they appeared. The company needed new money to support old promises, but lenders and investors became less willing to provide it. Public scrutiny did not create every weakness inside Enron. It made those weaknesses impossible to keep separate. Enron needed belief as much as it needed cash. Its contracts depended on future payments, its estimates depended on future prices, and its outside entities depended on confidence that the structure would hold. While investors believed the company's story, money continued to move through the system. When that belief broke, the same structure that had made Enron look powerful began to pull it apart. Trust vanished before the final bankruptcy filing. Lenders demanded more protection. Investors sold shares. Employees watched the value of their savings fall while the company's public image collapsed around them. Hidden debt did not suddenly appear from nowhere. It became visible when no one was willing to pretend that confidence could replace proof. Kenneth and Jeffrey Skilling stood at the center of a company built on aggressive growth and fragile confidence. Their leadership helped create a culture in which rising numbers were rewarded, while admitting trouble could threaten careers and status. Skilling's resignation in August 2001 removed a central figure, but it did not remove the pressure that had shaped Enron. By then, the system had learned to protect the appearance of success. The lasting consequence reached far beyond Enron's offices. In 2002, the United States passed the Sarbanes-Oxley Act, requiring stronger controls over company accounts and making senior executives more directly responsible for the truth of financial reports. The law could not restore the savings, jobs, and trust that had been lost. It did, however, turn one company's hidden failures into a permanent warning about what happens when complexity is allowed to stand in for honesty. The durable consequence arrived in law. After Enron filed for bankruptcy on December 2, 2001, Congress passed the Sarbanes-Oxley Act in 2002, requiring top executives to personally certify their financial reports and forcing companies to check their internal controls more closely. A signature on a report was no longer meant to be a formality. It became a direct responsibility. For Enron's workers, the collapse was not an abstract lesson in corporate ethics. Thousands lost their jobs, and many saw their retirement savings fall because their plans were heavily tied to Enron stock. The same company that had urged employees to believe in its future had left families facing an uncertain one. The damage spread beyond Houston. Investors questioned whether other companies were hiding debt. Auditors were pushed to prove their independence, and employees learned that a rising stock price could conceal personal danger. Enron's collapse changed how people read corporate success, because the numbers that looked strongest had been among the least trustworthy. The aftershock reached the institutions that had helped build the story. In 2002, Arthur Andersen was convicted of obstructing justice for destroying Enron-related documents, though the conviction was later overturned by the United States Supreme Court in 2005. By then, the firm had largely disappeared, and its failure showed that the scandal had not destroyed only one company. It had damaged an entire system of trust. The record left by Enron was therefore larger than its bankruptcy filing. It showed how pressure for constant growth, weak oversight, complex deals, and the fear of admitting failure could join together inside a respected business. The deception did not begin with one false number. It became powerful when many people accepted the numbers because they needed the success to be real. In the end, Enron's collapse can be traced to a simple contradiction. The company looked strongest when its hidden obligations were growing fastest.